Good morning. And now I'm amplified too. Might be a little too amplified. All right. Out of the flames of fear, we rise with courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of scrutiny, we rise to proclaim our faith with hope to heal a fractured and hurting world. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all that is and all that is yet to be. Out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love, love that celebrates our shared humanity. Out of the flames, we rise. Come, let us worship. With joy of the children's sounds in the sanctuary, come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Berkeley. I'm Don Close, and I'll be your worship associate today. This is a welcoming congregation. We're always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. If this is your first time here, we're so glad you've come. And whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Uchin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relationship with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. Now let us kindle our chalice flame with these words. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage as we seek what is good within and around us. We also pause to remind ourselves of some of the foundations of resilience. With Reverend Michelle, we light a candle of courage, a candle of acts of service, a candle of fellowship, and a candle of hope. May we find and cultivate these foundations of resilience in ourselves and in one another. Now, please join us in singing our opening song, I Know I Can. The words will be on the screen. Please join me now in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose: to give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
Right. If you are young in body or young in spirit, I invite you to join me on the steps so we can do time for all ages. And for littles, I have something for you. So we'll have to share, but I think there's plenty for us to share. Okay, so yes. So this one. Does anyone want to use this rattle? Or this rattle? Yeah. Yeah, go for it. You just take it at the bottom and go. There you go. You want this one? And we can share. We can all share, right? We'll share? Okay. All right. So, who has seen a snake before? Yes. Who likes snakes? Me too. That's so cool. Is anybody afraid of snakes? You know what? Both can be true at the same time. So, I love snakes and I am also afraid of them at the same time. And this story about this rattlesnake, I actually had a rattlesnake rear up at me once. And that was an interesting moment. But I learned a lot. And now I have deep respect for those animals that have the graciousness to warn us when they are having big emotions. So good for them for that. All right, so baby rattlesnake's first rattle. This is about a rattlesnake. And when I say the word rattle, you can shake your rattle. And if you don't have a rattle, you can rattle your feet, or you can clap your hands. All right, so baby rattlesnake was so little. He was so little, he didn't even have a rattle yet. Baby rattlesnake wanted a rattle. He went to Mama rattlesnake. Mama, Mama, I want a rattle. Give me a rattle. No, baby rattlesnake, you are too little. You would get into trouble with a rattle. He went to Papa rattlesnake. Papa, Papa, I want a rattle. Give me a rattle. No, baby rattlesnake, you are too little. You would get into trouble with the rattle. Baby rattlesnake, you are too little. So baby rattlesnake went to Grandpa rattlesnake. Grandpa, Grandpa, I want a rattle. Please, please, please give me a rattle. No, baby rattlesnake, you are too little. You would get into trouble with a rattle. But baby rattlesnake would not quit. Please, Grandpa, please, please, I am really big now. Let me have my own rattle. People got tired of hearing him whine. So finally the elders said, go ahead and give him a rattle. He will just get into trouble, but he will learn. Baby rattlesnake was so happy with his new rattle, he sang a rattlesnake song. He did a rattlesnake dance. He was playing all over the place with his new rattle. Then baby rattlesnake had an idea. I can scare somebody with my rattle. Rattle, 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 rattle. No. I know. There was Jack Rabbit hopping down the road. Baby rattlesnake hid behind the rock. He waited. He waited. He kept real still. Hop, hop, hop. That baby rattlesnake jumped out rattling. Help! Jack Rabbit jumped so high. Baby rattlesnake laughed. That was a good joke. Who else can I scare? Here came Old Man Turtle. Oh boy, I can scare him too. Baby rattlesnake hid behind his rock. Old Man Turtle came down the road so slow. 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. Baby rattlesnake waited. He kept real still. 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, and then help! Old Man Turtle jumped so high in the air, baby rattlesnake laughed and laughed. That was a good joke to play on Old Man Turtle. Who else can I scare? There was the chief's daughter coming down the road. She walked so tall. She held her head high in the air. I can scare the chief's daughter. Baby rattlesnake hid behind his rock. He waited. He kept real still. The chief's daughter came down the road, step and step and step and step. The chief's daughter was so proud. The chief's daughter was so brave. She was not afraid of anything. Step and step and step and step. And the chief's daughter whirled. Ho! That chief's daughter brought her foot down hard on baby rattlesnake's new rattle. Crunch! Crunch! Oh no. Ha! The chief's daughter ground his rattle into the path, step and step and step, and walked away. That chief's daughter walked on down the path. Oh, poor baby rattlesnake crawled home. Mama saw his broken rattle. He was too young. Papa saw his broken rattle. He was too young. Grandma saw his broken rattle. He was too young to have a rattle. Grandpa saw his broken rattle. So did you learn something, baby rattlesnake? Now don't ask for a rattle again, not until you're old enough to know how to behave. And baby rattlesnake did not. So that's a little bit of a sad story because he got hurt, right? But the thing I want to say, because we're talking about courage today, is that even when we're afraid of some things, sometimes they're afraid of us, right? So when we see things that are scary, we don't have to immediately be scared. We can just realize that they might be feeling the same way about us that we're feeling about them. And of course, we want to always respect all of nature in the best way that we can. Yeah, we'll all live together well. So, blessings, thank you. All right. Oh, religious education. So, K through 5, you're going to be in room 1, and high schoolers and middle schoolers and youth, you're going to be in the Saphir room, and we will go now. Blessings.
And I hope the rest of us can stand and sing all these wonderful children out to their classes. We'll do number 402 in the teal hymnal, the gray hymnal. From you I receive.
Thank you so much. Maybe I should read this.
And we now enter the time in our service that we make for our hearts, for the things we may be carrying, for our disappointments, like baby rattlesnakes, for our burdens, and for our joys. Wasn't it a joy to hear the sounds of all those children in here? So we now make time in our service to hold all of these things. During our time of silence this morning, I invite us into that silence to bring into our mind's eye the faces and those we may be holding and remembering. During our time, I invite you to bring them before your mind's eye and hold them in your heart. As we join now in the spirit of prayer, I invite you to continue to hold their faces and your own. Let us join now in the spirit of prayer. When we are overwhelmed with the world and cannot see our way clear, when life seems a struggle between tedium and apathy, or frenzy and exhaustion, when today may seem a punishment and tomorrow a torment, may we find the courage of patience. May we recognize courage in ourselves and our companions, courage that is not dramatic, elicits no fanfare, commands little notice by the world, that is forgotten and taken for granted. May we learn how to cope, like those who live one day of pain at a time, who see the long path of suffering and yet do not despair, who inspire us with their patient courage when we may be impatient and afraid. May we know such courage and celebrate its presence among us. Amen. Please remain seated for our meditative hymn. If you want the music, it's 83 in the gray hymnal, Winds Be Still.
Our reading this morning is from Brené Brown. Her social science research focuses on the relationship of courage, fear, and vulnerability. It clearly supports the theme today. Courage isn't the opposite of fear. Her books include Daring Greatly and Braving the Wilderness. I'm finding her work provocative and inspirational. In the following excerpts, I'll highlight some of her ideas that expanded my thinking, and I hope might expand yours. Vulnerability is the core of all emotions and feelings. To feel is to be vulnerable. To believe that vulnerability is weakness is to believe that feeling is weakness. To foreclose on our emotional life out of fear that the cost will be too high is to walk away from everything that gives purpose and meaning to living. Vulnerability is not weakness, and the uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure we face every day are not optional. Our only choice is a question of engagement. Our willingness to own and engage with our own vulnerability determines the depth of our courage and the clarity of our purpose. The level to which we protect ourselves from being vulnerable is a measure of our fear and disconnection. To me, vulnerability is courage. It's about the willingness to show up and to be seen in our lives. And those moments when we show up are, I think, the most powerful, meaning-making moments of our lives, even if they don't go well. I think it's a long walk from what will people think to I am enough. I think it is recognizing that if courage is a value that we hold as important, that vulnerability is the only way in and through. These moments define who we are. Vulnerability is the core, the heart, the center of meaningful human experience. Brené Brown's writing has rekindled a quandary I struggle with. It is my struggle to master the courage, how should I put it, to keep the faith when I survey the existential threats facing humanity in the 21st century. How do we keep faith and push back cynicism and numbing and resignation and disengagement? The litany of threats is very long, from global climate change and the renewed nuclear arms race to local societal polarization and faltering democracy. How do we keep hope alive? It is easy to say that the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, but that may simply not be true. It requires an act of courage to hold the hope that we, both locally and globally, can surmount the existential threats that humanity is faced with. The uncertainty, the risks, and dangers are very real. If we open our eyes, it is deeply frightening. Can we mount the moral, some would say the spiritual courage, to embrace our vulnerability, and as Brené Brown would say, gain the strength in moving in and through it, and bolster our engagement in good works when we can and where we can.
Thank you, Don. And when he and I started talking about the topic for the day, he heard my mention of Brené Brown and said, "Oh, who's that?" and started reading her books and delving into her work. She's fabulous, by the way. I recommend her to everyone. So it seemed just like any other day, and I guess really it was. I was heading into work for the day at my internship with the Faithful Fools Street Ministry in the Tenderloin District of San Francisco. The area had been struggling with the recently passed sit-lie legislation. Anybody here heard of that? Yeah. What it is, it prohibited folks from sitting or lying on the sidewalk during the daytime. It had been pushed through by businesses in the city, but left those without some place to be during the day with nowhere to even be able to sit down, especially when the library wasn't open. So this morning, I walked up to the front of the Faithful Fools building to see a woman sitting outside on the sidewalk. She wasn't someone that I knew, but was someone from the neighborhood that I recognized. She had never said anything to anyone at the Fools. As I walked up to the door, a police car pulled up beside her, and a policeman got out of the car. Clearly, he was about to oust her from the sidewalk. I already had my keys out in my hand and was about to go in. I'd already unlocked the door. But I turned around and proceeded to stare at the police officer. I stood and stared at him for maybe about a minute, although it felt like much longer. Finally, without saying anything, he got back in the car and left. Softly, I heard the woman say, "Thanks." Now, when I've shared this story with others, they've replied about how courageous it was. But here's the thing, I didn't think it was courageous. In fact, my knees were shaking the entire time, and all I wanted to do was to run inside the building and pretend that it never happened. Because that's not what, courage is supposed to feel like, right? That felt like pure cowardice. But folks have encouraged me to name it as courage because I didn't run into the building despite how I felt. So, what is courage? Which is our monthly worship theme, by the way, which is why we're talking about it today. What is courage? Would this incident have felt more like courage if I had called it that? Would it have been courage because other people called it that? Is courage in the eyes of the beholder or in the person who is doing the courageous act? Would it have been courage if I hadn't felt afraid? Is fear a necessary part of courage? What is courage anyway? So there's a quote from Teddy Roosevelt that I absolutely love. Some of you may have heard it, and I've adapted this version for gender inclusion. Here's what he says. "It is not the critic who counts, not they who point out how the strong stumble or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the one who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, great devotions, who spends oneself in a worthy cause, who at best knows the end, and in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if they fail, at least fails while daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." That's pretty cool, isn't it? This daring greatly, this trying despite knowing that you might very well fail and fail badly. You could call it perseverance. You could call it courage. The willingness to be in the arena and the gumption to stay there. Gumption, awesome word, by the way. The willingness to be in the arena and the gumption to stay there. That's courage. But being in the arena, if it really is an arena, and I don't just mean Hunger Games arenas here, If it really is an arena that requires courage to be there, it is a scary place. And just being in there is going to kick up one's feelings of unworthiness and fear, not being good enough, and of vulnerability in so many ways. And as you heard from the selections from Brené Brown that Don shared about, Brown connects vulnerability and fear directly with acts of courage. Take a minute and think about a time when you witnessed what you call courage in someone else, or when you acted with courage, which might have been what others had to call it for you. Was there fear there? Was there fear there too? If you're thinking of something you did, were you at least a little bit, if not a lot, afraid in that moment? My claim is that it's not just courage does go with fear, it's that courage isn't possible without there being fear right along there with it. Because if there isn't fear, then someone doing something is just, doing it. There's no particular significance attached to it, it's just a thing you do. Brené Brown said that in many interviews and research that she's done on courage and fear and vulnerability, she couldn't find a single example of courage that didn't come from a place of vulnerability. So it's not that courage is the opposite of fear at all. It's that fear and vulnerability are what make it an act of courage. Fear and vulnerability make it courage. And there's a side part I don't want us to lose sight of either, and it's that our role models and folks who are inspirational for us. Because I look to folks that I see acting with courage, and I try to let their example help me be more willing to act when I'm afraid. Because that thick, fuzzy blanket, I'd rather just hide under there and not do anything. So we need the role models and inspiration to help us when we get into those vulnerable places. Now, does that mean their action was courage? I don't think necessarily so, at least not for them. Now, it may have been, they may have been afraid and going into the arena anyway, but it's that I call it courage that makes it an inspiration for me. Dr. Martin Luther King is one of my inspirational role models. And in his writing, he talks about his fear and uncertainty. He talks about it a lot. It was there, and he was amazingly courageous. But that doesn't necessarily mean all of the folks I look to for inspiring courage thought of themselves as courageous. You know what, though? They don't have to think of themselves as courageous. It can be courage to me without it needing to be courage for them, if it's speaking to my own feelings of vulnerability. Now, there's a neat story that you may have heard about a rescue in a subway station. I don't know if it was something in New York. It could have been in San Francisco. But a rescue in a subway station. See, a seeing impaired man who used a cane to see his way around had fallen off the platform and onto the tracks. Naturally, everyone on the tracks went crazy, especially because they could hear the sound of a train coming at that moment. Folks were trying to reach to him or lower things to help him up, but the man ignored them all and kept simply calling for his cane, which had fallen down with him. Finally, one guy jumped down from the platform onto the tracks. Remember, there was a train coming in. Guy jumped down, grabbed the cane, handed it to the man, and just jumped himself back up. Now, don't worry, the story has a good ending. The man calmed down immediately once he had his cane in his hand and made it back to the platform before the train got there. Now, you can say a lot of things about this story, but here's the point I want to make today. The man who jumped down onto the track with the train coming was named as a hero and was called out for his courage that other people looked to. But he denied that's what it was. What he said is, the guy just said he needed his cane. I knew I could get it for him and had time to jump back up before the train got there. To him, it wasn't courage. It was just a thing he did. But I see it as an act of courage because I would have been terrified to do something like that. There are all sorts of courageous acts and all sorts of acts of courage. Brené Brown talks about moral courage and spiritual courage, leadership courage and relational courage. And another way to think about these, there are these great big acts of courage, and there are the little ones, the everyday ones that happen like in the subway, these little acts of courage that are all around us. Now, I don't know about you, but I find myself needing more and more of these everyday acts of courage. In fact, I've needed them for a long time. I have signed up for a particular text notification service when something awful happens in the country or the world. It has its own sound. And I cringe when it makes that sound. It's never good when it does either. And then there's the hard stuff that keeps hitting us every single week. It's hurricane season, and many on the East Coast, as they're starting the recovery from Hurricane Ian, they're also bracing themselves for what will be next. And then fire season here. We've come to the month of October, which I know can be a time of many memories of significant fires in this area and around. And then there are the smaller but just as significant atrocities that don't make the headlines, or at least only make very localized headlines. The nearly 5 million women who face domestic violence in the U.S. every year, and a number of men who face it as well, but are usually left out of the statistics. The nearly 1,500 women killed by men that they know every year. The small mass shootings that take place all over the country, like the one just this past week down the street from one of our staff members. They could see the news trucks from their house. The violence and hate crimes directed at LGB folks and particularly at trans folks. The millions of adults, families, and children living in abject poverty. The many repressed and disappeared in Venezuela and other places. The genocide in Burma and Ethiopia. I'm sure you can think of others. These things that are ever so real, even though they don't make the headlines, but they're still there in our world. And these weigh on us. It is hard not to go down a path towards inaction and cynicism. Even just saying these, can you feel the weight in this room? It is hard, is it not? Hope, that thing with feathers, can be awfully hard to catch even a glimpse of. But I'm going to get it back, because here's how it relates to courage. Choosing not to be cynical, choosing to not let that despair weigh us down, especially in these times. Choosing that is an act of courage. Despite those feelings of fear, remember, fear and vulnerability are what make it courage. Despite those facts of fear, of helplessness, choosing not to be entirely weighed down by these, this is a courageous act. Now, I didn't say choosing not to be angry. I've actually talked with folks in the past couple weeks about anger. I think anger can be a powerful and useful thing. So if it is a motivating force for you, please do stay angry about these things. Because anger doesn't have to mean cynicism. Anger is power. So what are some of the little acts of everyday courage that you can tap into? What are these everyday acts of courage that you can do? Because we can contribute to the big things, but it's those little acts done all the time, every day, the little acts that can make just as much a difference, if not more, because they keep us going. Choosing not to be cynical, that is an everyday act of courage. Speaking up against acts of racism that you see, both the overt ones, but even the small ones, the microaggressions that are everywhere. As anyone who's ever done knows, speaking up against one of these little acts still takes courage. Men who speak up against misogyny and so-called locker room talk, that takes courage. And by the way, that's one of the main ways that domestic violence is going to change. And I personally say thank you to those who have done that. Standing up for someone, like the police officer I talked about, a small act of courage. Making a different choice when you may feel uncertain, going outside of your comfort zone. Getting to know folks in your community that are totally different from you, that you might not get to know otherwise. These are small acts of courage, and we need them. So what do we need to be able to keep being courageous, to be able to keep choosing to act, being in the arena for the small things and the big despite feeling afraid and vulnerable? I'm looking at one of those things. We need communities of support and reminders and accountability. I think we also need to be able to feel like we have a choice, that we are choosing to do something or to be somewhere. Because if we wake up one day in the arena, okay, think Hunger Games or the like, it's not necessarily courage, we're just stuck there, although it still can be. But if we choose to jump in, that is courage. So aside from communities of support, we also need inspiration and role models. I have some folks from the past or folks whose words I read, like Dr. King's, and I also have some folks right here in the present who I may know or I may not. I mean, look around the space that you're in. Are there role models and inspiration for you right here in this room? They may not even know it. We need inspiration and role models to keep being courageous. And I encourage you to look out for them in the areas that you need them, particularly as we're looking at increasing levels of climate change, looking for those who are leading with voices of hope, and in areas of anti-racism. Look for your role models. To keep going, we also need spiritual grounding and we need purpose. And it's not that I'm just saying things. I truly think courage is not sustainable without them. Communities of support, inspirational models, spiritual grounding, and purpose. We need both the short-term whys as well as the big picture whys. Why are we spending our life's energy on them, and how they connect with our own beliefs about what we're here for? To keep going, we need these. And last, that anger. We need the power of anger. I am angry about what I see keep happening in our country and the world. I feel powerless about a lot of it, but it doesn't stop me from being angry. We need anger, we need power, we need the power of our collective and individual anger, and we need the power of our collective courage to keep moving things forward. Are you with me on this? So keep these in mind. We're going to do our offering, going to do announcements, but then when we get to our last hymn, Gentle, Angry People, that's why I bring it up, and let that stick with you too. May it be so.
At this point in our service, we invite you to make an offering. With our offering, each of us has the opportunity to recommit to making UUCB a strong and vibrant community. For now, we are conducting our offering in the sanctuary without passing the plate. Instead, you can either give electronically, or you can take a donation envelope from the back of the pew in front of you and place it into the donation box beside the fountain in the atrium. We support our wonderful Good Neighbor organizations through our plate offering. Each week, half our plate offering is shared with a Good Neighbor organization recommended by our Social Justice Council. This month, our Good Neighbor organization is the Greater Richmond Interfaith Program, GRIP. GRIP is a multicultural, multi-ethnic coalition of congregations from varied faiths working together, dedicated to helping those of our community in need to transition to self-sufficiency. This morning, we are honored to have GRIP's Executive Director, Ralph Payton, with us to speak to us about GRIP. Ralph will be in the show, at the social justice table in the atrium after the service for a meet and greet. Please take time to say hello to him. Ralph Payton.
Thank you, Don. And I thank the Social Justice Council for selecting GRIP as October's Good Neighbor. I have to say I'm humbled to be before you today. Today's message was surprisingly impactful. When I think of everyday acts of courage, I can't help but think of the many volunteers that UUCB has brought to GRIP over the decades. UUCB was one of the founding congregations of GRIP over 50 years ago. And volunteers serving our families, serving our unsheltered neighbors, serving with a smile, serving with a compassionate glance, to me, that's an everyday act of courage, and I thank you for that. For those of you that aren't familiar with GRIP, GRIP is West Contra Costa's only family shelter. And in addition, we are also a soup center, a soup kitchen. We serve over 50,000 meals a year to those that are unsheltered and hungry. We also have shower services, laundry services. We will do whatever it takes to help those that are looking to get back in their own homes, get back on the road sufficiency, get there. We are fortunate to have a very committed and compassionate team that cares for our families as they make this difficult journey. Many of you might not be aware, but Contra Costa County experienced over a 30% increase in homelessness in the last 2 years. That was the greatest out of all of the counties in the Bay Area. Richmond in particular was heavily impacted by homelessness. A lot of families and individuals that were already on the edge were just pushed over with the pandemic. So I have to thank all of you that have donated to GRIP over the years, all of you that have volunteered at GRIP over the years. We are truly a community-supported organization. And your donations, your volunteerism, your service is what keeps GRIP's mission alive. For those of you that can, we have our annual fundraiser, our Harmony Walk this year on October 22nd at Nichols Park. We'll have some flyers at the Social Justice Council table in the back. But please join us. You know, if you're unable to volunteer, perhaps you can come out to run or walk with us or cheer those on that are running and walking. Again, it takes all of us to change a community, and I want to thank you, UCB, for your decades of support in helping GRIP meet its mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. So we are grateful for all of the members of our congregation who have continued to practice generosity with our good neighbors through these very hard times. Offerings of any value are always received with gratitude. Thank you. Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service.
It has been fabulous being together today and seeing every one of your faces. So in just a minute, we'll finish the service. I hope you'll stay around, connect with each other, enjoy hospitality out on the terrace. But I have some announcements first before we sing. Of course, announcements. First of all, I hope that you will plan to be here for a congregational meeting on October 23rd. That's, what, 3 weeks from now? 3? Yeah, I think so. Where the congregation will be voting on the church's retreat property in Sonoma County, Freestone. There will be Q&A sessions in 2 weeks on October 16th after the worship service. That'll be live streamed and recorded. And then the day after that, Monday evening on Zoom, will also be recorded, 2 Q&A sessions. So I hope that you will make sure to take a look and engage in that process and be there for those. And this Saturday, what's going on? Anyone know? Brian Baker and Friends. It is one of our annual fundraising concerts this Saturday, 7 p.m. I hope that you can come and enjoy some fabulous music. And then Sunday morning, we are going to be having a great big welcome to the firefighters, as we'll be having a pancake breakfast next Sunday before the service. If you want pancakes, you have to come here early, so set your alarm. And an announcement from your ministerial search committee. Join us this month for focus groups and cottage meetings, which are small group conversations about our hopes for a future ministry. We've had focus groups with specific groups within the congregation, such as the board or choir. If you've not already attended one or heard about one coming up, or if you'd like to attend another, we invite you to a cottage meeting, which includes congregants from various interest areas. To sign up, use the link in the week ahead, and I believe the committee also has a table in the atrium if you'd like to know more about them. All right, we good to go for the week now? You filled up? Let's do another song, though. Please rise in body or in spirit. We are a gentle, angry people. It's 170 in the gray hymnal if you need the music.
Gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing for our lives. We
gentle, angry people, a gentle, loving people, a gentle, courageous people. And we are all in this together. We are singing and gathering and working and moving together for our lives and the lives of those who come after us in our world. May you go now with peace, with compassion, with anger, with hope, and with courage. And remember, you're never all alone. Blessed be. Please be seated.